Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to be building a fortified prison. So this is really an extension of the Trey Parker Blood and Plunder table we've been building in the last few episodes. So that first episode, we built the tavern, and then we moved on to the lighthouse. And in this episode, we're going to be building a fortified prison. I always had this kind of idea of I wanted to have some kind of government building a part of this port. And you know, in the kind of a prison scenario where you have to free half your pirate crew to complete an objective in town. And how could I incorporate those two together? So I just thought of doing a fortified prison. And most prisons back then would have been in some kind of stone fort of some sort. This design has a little bit of elements of stone fort, Spanish fort, but also some palisade elements to it as well. So it's got a, maybe not rooted 100% in history, but has some historical elements to it. But you know me, I like to stylize things just like the lighthouse and other things, just to add a little bit more flair to it, let's just say. So it's not 100% would be historically accurate, but like I said, there's elements to it that are. So let's just take a look at it. There's a lot of components to it, and yes, it's been a while since we released an episode, mainly because of complexity of these projects. I really didn't want to release them in parts, and I've done that before when I've had a part 1, part 2, part 3. I think it just kind of gets lost, considering this is, you know, part of a series of videos I'm doing for one table. I just figured that I would just complete the project and then release it all at once, just so you guys can see this. So this will be a little bit of a longer episode, but there's a lot of elements to it, and you'll see why. Here, let's take a look at it. I have it over here, and I'm going to try to fit it in the screen. So this is it all right here. Let me just go back a little bit so you can see it. So you see it's got like a stone fort. I got kind of like a, I would say this is like a garrison house or a keep of some sort, mainly where the soldiers would have stayed in. And this is kind of an administration building, probably where they process the criminals. Once I get all these top parts off, I'll show you the prison that's inside. But just going to show you the outside of the building all the way around. Kind of went with kind of a stone out the bottom of the fort. This side of it's more, like I said, more like the Spanish fort, kind of stone fort look to it. And then there's kind of a palisade top on some of it. So we're just going to go all the way around, just so you can see what it looks like. Get around to the front again. There we go. So let's take off this element here. We're going to take this off this section here. And each part is playable. So you got this top part here. And the only thing I did differently on this one, I put a staircase, as you can see. As it was getting a little tighter inside here, I didn't want to waste up all the space on a staircase. So I just did a ladder, and this one leads to a roof hatch at the top here. And I have little emplacements for cannons on here. We went with an egg carton kind of top to make it look more like a stone fort. But again, has palisade parts to it. And again, I went with a track system. I like this track system. You can just hook it on like that. Off we go. So that's one part of it. Let's put this over here so I don't drop it. Then we have another section here. And this one I kind of wanted to have like a terracotta, kind of like the Spanish tiled roofs, to give it that more a Spanish feel to it, more appropriate for that area, adding a historical kind of component to it. So this just comes off, just I think it kind of was like a track system too on there. That just hooks on into, opens up into here, which leads down to a staircase down below, which we're going to see in a minute. But it's just kind of a basic structure there for the top. And then I kind of had these two sections here. They come off the front. They're actually over top of where the cells are. So I came up with a system where either I take the top off or have to make the doors slidable. So I figured this would be easier to go ahead and just take the top, and then you can add things into the prison. So I went with this route instead of the sliding doors, and I figured this would be a better element for that. So we have these two components here, and this is kind of, like I said, got that more Spanish fort where you put your artillery in there, in those. So I just wanted to have that kind of component to it. Again, adding a little more historical to this. It's got a little other fantasy elements maybe to it. It's not rooted in history. All right, so let's flip it upside down here. Now I can actually, with all the pieces not falling off, I can show you the inside. So you got, it's quite large here. So you got your cells here, and I said that's where that section goes over top. And then you got another, this is another staircase that leads up to that smaller house. This is inside that garrison house. And then you got other stairwells that go up to the second level between the buildings, which is kind of neat. And then I kind of made like a trap door here kind of on the main entranceway. They probably would have dropped hot oil and other lovely things down on the invading forces coming through that gateway. Or maybe a way to evacuate. But really, I made this, you could actually play a whole like scenario right inside this fort. There's so many different things you could actually do in here. Places to hide, multiple levels. You know, this is a fair size structure, and you can have quite a bit of fun in here. So that's what we're going to be building. As you can see, there's a lot of elements, and we're going to have to go through all the different pieces and kind of my process of building it. So obviously I didn't have a blueprint when I started, which I usually do when I build these projects. I just kind of have an idea of what I want it to look like, and then I kind of build myself into corners and figure it out that way. All right, so that's pretty much it. Let's get down to the table. So before we do that, if you like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down to the table and let's start doing some painting and let's start doing some crafting. Okay, so let's take a look see some of the supplies we're going to need for this project. So we got some various different sizes of balsa wood here. The larger ones I use for staircases, smaller ones for framing. We got our dollar store foam board, insulation foam. I got 1/2 inch and 1 inch thicknesses, egg cartons. This is some corrugated cardboard that I got from Amazon. Different colors don't really matter. We're going to paint over it anyways. And then we got our coffee stir sticks I also got from Amazon. Those are really good, the textured type. Some toothpicks, some stone and sand, and some drywall compound. The Dry Decks by DAP, that's pink and dries white. So I started the project out by just measuring it out on this piece of dollar store foam board. Now you're probably wondering, it's got black paper. It comes black and white. I prefer the white papered one, but in this case I had a lot of extra of the black, so I just used that for my base. The strength supplies are the same, but I do like to use just foam board or dollar store foam board for the base of it. So the first thing I got to do is I kind of just drew my pattern out on how I'm going to build it, and then painted with black craft paint, which sealed it in. I painted both sides so it doesn't warp. And there we go. We got a good base to build our fort on here. So I started off by measuring out the main walls, the inner walls first before I did the outer walls. So I kind of figured out how big I was going to make it. I cut out the openings for the prison. And I'm going to texture the side facing out. The prison's a little trickier because some of the prison walls I wanted to texturalize too as well. And then some of them didn't really matter because they were going to be covered with a topping. They're just an outer wall with nothing facing to the outside. So this is the inner core of the entire fort and where the prisons are going to be. Now I'm working on the outer wall. So I got to figure out how I got to make it wide enough so we have a walking space on top, because I do plan on having fortifications on the outer wall and some buildings in the center. So I just kind of measured that all out and going to glue an outer wall all the way around. I left an opening, as you can see, at the front. That's for the main entranceway. So then I got it like this. So I got an outer wall, and then I started putting, as you can see, little chunks of dollar store foam board in some areas to support it. So like put supports in there so it's not so wobbly. And these don't really matter as much as long as they're about the same height. They're just there for strengths where nobody's going to see them anyways. They're going to be covered with the top of the piece. So they're just there for strengths. But that one that's near the prison, I do eventually want to put some stonework on it. And you can see I textured the outside of that foam board on the outer side of the wall too. That's what I'm showing you here. And the inner part doesn't matter. I left the paper on in the middle part just to add more strength. So then I moved on to wanting to texture some of the inside of the cells. So I decided to have a few of them with some stonework in there. So that's just insulation foam that I cut up into bricks. I actually had some left over from the previous project that I was working on, the lighthouse. And I just used those inside there to just add some texture to some of the walls. Those are the ones that are inside the prison. So then I decided I want to have a keep or some kind of garrison house on the inside of the fort. So I kind of measured that out, the size I wanted to have it, and fit inside there. Plus I wanted to have some kind of, I don't know, like administration, a guard house or something, or where they process people for the prison. And I kind of had that, I wanted to have another structure in there as well. So 2 buildings inside. And then, again, I'm going over I textured some of those walls that are in the prison. So this is the front facing of the smaller house and of the garrison house. And I'm just framing them out with coffee stir sticks, as I normally would with my houses and buildings. So I got the bases of them on here. Of course, these can be glued right down to, I'm not going to be able to remove them afterwards. They're just glued right down. But the tops will be able to be removable. So you'll be able to take everything off the top and play into these rooms. So that's why I've kind of constructed it this way. So everything measures out pretty good. The walls are a little higher than I normally would have a building. Mainly because it's more of a fort than just a standard structure. And when I got to this point, I sealed it in with black craft paint before I went off to anything else. Just added a whole bunch of strengths to everything else in the entire structure. So now I've added coffee stir sticks and balsa wood, and I'm starting to frame what's inside, add even more strengths. I like to use a combination of paint, craft paint, sometimes Mod Podge, and also wood structuring and foam itself to give the whole piece strength. So this straightens everything out too as well. As you can see, the foam is kind of wavy a little bit, especially in certain areas where I took the paper up both sides. So if you add all this wood framing to everything, it'll straighten everything out nice and straight. So that's what I'm illustrating here. I'm just going to kind of add a lot of wood to the insides of the structures, the corners for sure, and then the outer walls. I also decided to add another layer of support around the framing by adding little chunks of balsa wood in there. You can see framing it out even further. And I'm starting to work on the entranceway now to the entire piece. And then I moved on to adding planks to the bottom floors here inside the structures. I decided to go with a wooden plank look inside. Before I started moving on to anything else in there, I wanted to get that flooring put down. Now, in the prisons, I'm probably going to go with more of a egg carton kind of look, more stone look. And I, again, decided to go with a even larger balsa wood all the way around and add a little edging. This will also make the tops a little wider. I think as I went along, I realized that the one side was a little thin. And to bulk it up a little bit, I decided to just put a whole frame all the way around it, which will look good. It'll give the whole thing like an upper-lower level separation. So as you can see, I went all the way around with that larger balsa wood. And that gives me a little more room to work with on the top as well. So now we're going to move to stairs. And this is what I use these big chunks of like balsa wood. They're big square pieces, I got them all on Amazon. You can get them in bulk on Amazon. And I like to use them as my core of my stairs. So I'm going to use 2 staircases to go up to the main level. So I got to kind of make a windy staircase because it's a taller wall because of being a fortification. And I like to use the height of that square balsa wood as my stair level heights, which I found is, obviously it's not to scale to 28 mil, but it's enough that it's not that noticeable. That's why I use that same height. So to get up the wall, I had to use windy staircases. But you know what? It looks a lot more interesting. It's going to have some interesting gameplay because you'll have a little platform on a certain part of it. And it'll be more interesting where you can take shots from and hide around corners and such. So this is just showing you how I've kind of glued it together. And then I've added coffee stir sticks as the tops of the stairs to make them wider. You can see I use those little smaller pieces of wood, some matchsticks, and then just glue some coffee stir sticks to that to get kind of like a framing on your stairs, like a outer wall kind of thing. Good place to hide cover if your guys duck down below. So using gameplay considerations while I'm building the staircase to make it a little more interesting, because I like to have the game played on the staircase. As you can see, this winds up to the next level, and you got this neat little staircase, little nook there. Same with this side, and you could shoot from those top platforms and have cover up there and down into the courtyard below. So again, gameplay being a consideration. So then I moved into egg cartons. So I kind of wanted to make some kind of pathway here in the courtyard using those egg carton stones. And then inside the prison, I figured the prison, I put stone walls and they would have a stone floor as well, just to make it look more grimy. And they wouldn't have wooden planks in there. It would be something hard and more painful to stay in, I would think. Anyway, so just showing you that I'm going to plan on gluing all that in there. But I want to get these kind of like a cobblestone, looks like cobblestone look inside the prisons, and made a little pathway. The rest of it I'm probably going to do with some gravel. Just do some gravel and sand and rocks and stuff I showed you at the beginning. We're just going to glue that in there and kind of fill it in. But before you do that, I know it's kind of tricky, but I had to put the staircases in first because I couldn't glue the staircase on top of the gravel because it wouldn't be level. The only tricky part about putting the staircases in first is how do I get the gravel around the corner, because I've made these windy staircases and not straight. Well, I just kind of tipped it sideways and let the sand go down into the glue in the corner. It's a little tricky. So I decided to do a base coat first before anything else. I'd rather paint the staircase before I put them in. So we got the real brown, bark brown, Pueblo, and you got your yellow ochre and camel. Those are all the colors that I use for my undertones on every project I do. So the camel's more for the stonework, the yellow ochre is more for the woodwork, and all the other colors, everything else gets the treatment of everything else. And obviously, if I put the staircases in there, I can't paint the walls, right? So you got to kind of do this stuff in stages. So I painted in there first, before I glued things in there, because you won't be able to paint in there after I glue it in. So these are after I've added all those, and the only colors I've added to all this is just those undertones. So for the finer details, I moved into some speed paints. So we got hardened leather for kind of like the bands or the straps here, or the details on the wood. I didn't actually use that. I used sand golem instead. So disregard that color I just showed you. Sand golem actually gives you a much better, richer yellowed look. Agrax Earth Shader, Skeleton Horde is kind of my grunge team there. And we have to get all into these corners here before we seal those stairs in here. So I'm just going to add all those colors in there right now. So you just add some drippies and some some weathering going on in there. Nice little Agrax Earth Shader in the corners. And then I've added those speed paints to the stairs. You can see that sand golem actually makes it a rich look to the wood. I just cover the wood itself. So I had all the undertones underneath, and then I just added that over top. So then, like I said, I wanted to go with some sand. When you add like sand to this tacky glue and then cover it with craft paint, it becomes solid hard. It's actually the great combination together, and it makes you a nice solid game surface to roll your dice on. You will not dent or break that. It's just super strong together, those combinations. But I have to put it in there before I start painting, and I'll just paint it all at once. So then I decided to do some of the outer wall. I kind of wanted to have like boulders and stuff around the side. And the reason why I did this is I could either, use this fort in the ocean. So maybe that's like the shoreline. Or I'm going to add a little bit of some flocking to the edge to make it be used on the land. So it looks like it's just a landlock with a lot of rocks on it. And I just think it would add a lot more defensive, so you couldn't actually bring a ladder up to the side of the fortification because there was all that stone. It would be really hard to climb it. So it's kind of like a protection as well. It's not kind of similar to a moat, but made out of stone. It makes it a little trickier to get up right to the walls. So I have all sorts of different shapes here. I used a tinfoil ball here to give some texture to them. I got small rocks, big rocks, little rocks. You would just see a variety of rocks all the way around. You can see my sand is already dry now inside there, and I glued earlier in the extra step. But I figured I got to add all these stones on here as well. So you can see I just kind of plopped them on here. Got all sorts of different sizes. Looks good. And it's just more of a kind of a protective barrier around the end. And it allows this piece to be moved around. I know I'm building it for a larger game table, but, maybe he wants to use this for something separate. And you could have it as an island or a fortress island or something else. And it's portable and movable, and it can work independently from the rest of the table. That's what I'm getting at. All right, so now I'm showing you more framing. We're going to frame kind of the outer edges now. So we added some color, but we're going to add some more framing to it. And then I have to build the staircases inside. So not only did I have the outside staircases, I wanted to have staircases inside the garrison house that goes up to the main top level. And then inside this smaller administration building, I kind of wanted to have stairs that led up to more of the office space. So I kind of made a smaller staircase. So it like I said, you could play just the whole match inside this fort, because you have multiple places that you can get up to the second level. Some places are connected, some places are not. It was a little trickier making a staircase for this smaller building, but I managed to get a spiral staircase down there. You can see it's a nice snug fit. And again, we're gonna have to do painting prior to getting it in there. Everything has to be painted before I glue it in there. And that top piece will lead to an opening in the bottom floor that leads to the next level. And you can see I have this is coffee stir sticks, balsa wood, and those matchsticks is the combination I use on all my staircases. And then, of course, I'll glue that up against the wall. And you got a nice big staircase at the bottom of the garrison house that leads to the second level. I decided to use a ladder going to the very tippy top, though. I didn't make a second set. I wanted to have more room in that next floor. I'm going to use my huge miniatures little palette knife here. And I'm going to add the drywall compound. This gives it a little more roughed out look, opposed to just having a flat foam board there. You could put just gravel or flocking there. But I like the uneven surface. It looks more realistic. So I always add the drywall compound on there. Now, if I was going to do water, like I did with the lighthouse, then you can add some resin over top of that as well, right? So I'm just showing you all the different components that are going to need to be painted here. Now that I have it in place, I'm going to have to cover all this stuff with black craft paint and seal everything in. I pretty well fabricated the entire base now. All right, so we're all done. Of course, I decided to add some extra treatments on the bottom, just like some supports and just some points of interest. And just to make the entranceway look a little more interesting. So I added, it's just dollar store foam board, cut into little small strips. And I actually just pinched the ends with my fingers and then glued them in place. And then again, I'm showing you all the colors again: real brown, bark brown, Pueblo, camo, yellow ochre. And we're going to paint this whole base up. Now that we have it all in place and it's all organized and we're ready to go, before I went on to the second level, I just wanted to get it all painted before I start gluing things to the top, so it's separated. So I'm just showing you where I'm going to use all the colors. So again, yellow ochre for the wood, camel for the stone, and the rest gets the full treatment of all three other colors. So in this process, I decided to add more interest to the main entranceway and decided to add a few spikes in the front just to add a little more interest to it, give it a more menacing look. Let's put it that way. So you got kind of your looks like claws coming out of, or teeth coming out of the bottoms there, and then you got these spikes coming out. Just makes it a little more interesting entranceway. And then, of course, this is after I've added all those craft paints. I've done the stonework inside the prison, all the walls, and it's just a combination of those colors. No miniature paints ever added, except for, of course, the staircases that we did in the first step there. Before we glued them in, we added our miniature paints in there. But we will go back in there and add all those other colors as well. Like I said, the sand golem to the staircases, and hardened leather for the wooden framing there. And then I decided to go with a taupe color for the walls in there. I keep showing you that yellow, but I didn't use it. I used sand golem. I get those mixed up. You get a similar effect with the yellow, but I find it's just a little too bright. So sand golem is the right mix. And then mummy robe is what I use to highlight all my stones. So I just add a very little bit of the mummy robe over top of the stones, and it gives it a really realistic look. And then hardened leather again, like I said, for the supports and all this extra trim and detail. Just offsets it from the other colors, so it doesn't blend too well. You add something to offset it. Then some commando green, malignant green. That's just a wash that I'm just going to put on there to get some algae or some plant life growing there. Agrax Earthshader, skeleton horde. Again, just hitting everything. My grunge team, as I call it. And that's just going to make everything realistic. So I decided to stop here, and I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on this, but I'm going to paint some of these stones with that mummy robe. So I wanted to show you a little bit, because I really am kind of skipping over a lot of the painting techniques. Because this is such a long video and there's so many different aspects of it, I did want to spend a whole lot of time on the paint part of it. But I did stop here and show you how I add the mummy robe to these stones. So these stones had some of those washes on it. They had all the undertones I talked about, mostly camo to lighten them up. But then I come back with the mummy robe here, and you can see I hit some of the edges to brighten them up a little bit. It just gives it a more rocky look to it, or just lightly brush over top. And you can see I just got this ratty square brush. That's what I use to apply it on there. You could do a dry brush if you wanted to. I kind of just like to do it this way. But you definitely could just use a mummy robe and a dry brush and go over the whole thing, and it would catch all the edges and some of the raised surfaces. But some areas I don't want to have any, and some I want to have some. So this is kind of just me going along, deciding where I think there should be some more lightness to the rock, and kind of going through the entire piece like this. So this is really how I apply it, and I just wanted to spend some time on that piece. I didn't. In the past, I wouldn't have spent as much time showing you how I apply this. So that's looking pretty good. Got to get all the edges done. Give it a nice little stone look. Gives it a realistic stone look. All right, so now we're going to tackle the prison gates. And I really wanted to, this took a little bit to figure out. I figured, well, it's definitely going to have to use some toothpicks here as the bars. And probably not the pointy ends, but the rest of it. So I kind of made a little frame of coffee stir sticks. You can see I cut the little bits off. And then I kind of just glued them on top. And then I'm going to glue another frame of the coffee stir sticks over top of them, like this. I figured that would be a good way to glue them in place and hold them. Now, the bigger ones, I kind of have to make room for kind of a doorway, entranceway kind of thing. So I kind of blocked it off like this with a... So then you have it looks like there's a gateway or a door in between. So I didn't make it bars all the way across. I kind of made that's like a coffee stir stick doubled up in the center there as a support. And then I ended up using the little bits that are on the end of the toothpicks as the hinges. And then I went to my lovely Bejeweled from Michael's jewelry department there to make some like bolts in the iron. So I kind of put those in there, and then I have loops for the handles and the doors. That's just jewelry loops that I got from Michael's. And there you go. You got all your little bits for pretty convincing prison doors. Now, I said I decided to go in the intro there with an opening on the top, and so I contemplated originally actually making them sliding doors, but I quickly abandoned that and went to and over to the top. So then I'm just going to prime them all. So they look completely different when they're all primed. They look like they're something we're going to do it. We're going to give it all the regular treatment with the real brown, bark brown, Pueblo undertones, so it matches everything else. Again, I do everything in that same color, so everything has the same undertone, and then I just highlight it with different miniature paints over top to get different tones of different colors. So then we're going to add some of the metallics. This is after I added those 3 colors to the piece, and it looks pretty good like that. But I wanted to highlight some of the metallics and the bars and stuff like that. So definitely wanted to hit some of that. So my absolute favorite color is Huge Miniatures Iron. You could just paint this on and leave it. It looks fantastic. It looks like iron color. But if you want some highlights, I got some silver there from Huge Miniatures. We got this gold armor from Golden Armor. It's speed paint from Army Painter. Some rust effects here from Army Painter as well. And then, of course, our lovely friend, our Liquid Talent, Agrax Earth Shader, to add some grunge to it all. So those are the colors that I used to add to this piece. I kind of did some of the hinges and the handle and the gold color, and you can see I did look at how that iron looks. I didn't hardly add anything to it. I ended up adding a little bit of Agrax Earth Shader, but not really. You don't have to. That iron color is just great, the Huge Miniatures Iron. I really recommend that color. I used it on my knights as well. It looks really good on armor and stuff. All right, so now I'm just going to glue these in place. Now, I didn't show you, but I spent a lot of time measuring out those openings so these gates would actually fit in there. Kind of left a gap between some of them, so it looks like they're hitting a support beam. And there we go. We got a nice little prison here, and they look pretty good. So I was pretty happy with how those turned out. I kind of contemplated that actually for a day. I wasn't sure how I was going to go about doing that and if I was going to make them sliding. So, yeah, it was a process. So this is that cheap $1.50 stuff you get at the dollar store. It's for floral arrangements. I cut it up with a pair of scissors, and it makes a great flocking. I use kind of like an olive green kind of color. It comes in like 3 or 4 different colors, but I like that one the most. Kind of matches my color profile of everything else, and it looks good with the rest of the pieces. So the top here is to have to be done in sections. So I kind of cut out and measured all these little pieces out. Some of these are going to be permanently glued down because we don't need to lift them up. And some of them are going to be, I've kind of left that open because I'm going to have to take them off, right? Like that opening where the prison is, so that's how I'm going to access the cells. So that has to be done separately. So I went ahead and glued these pieces. As you can see, I gave it a black craft paint treatment to seal it in. Left enough room on here. That was a little tricky right where that garrison house is. I had to cut into it a little bit so that the house would fit in. But it'll give it a little snugger fit when you're trying to put these buildings in afterwards because you have that little extra lip in there. I like to use a little track system to get everything going here. So then I decided to add even another layer of framing on the outside of this as well to extend it out even further. So I just use my hot glue gun. When I'm doing like large pieces like this, I really recommend you use the hot glue gun opposed to white glue. White glue takes a long time to dry, and it's hard to keep it straight. Sometimes the balsa wood looks straight, but it's slightly off, and you know that when you start gluing it down. If you hot glue it, it'll hold in place, and it works a lot better. So you can see I framed out the whole thing, and I'm kind of sunken that a little bit because I want that next level to just kind of drop in there in place. So I'm already making kind of like a little bed for that top piece. And then we got to do some more framing. And of course, I want to use coffee stir sticks to make a wooden walkway all the way around the outside. Except for above the prison, I'm going to make that more of use egg cartons and more of a stone look where the cannons are going to be. So the other place is going to be kind of like the palisade part of it, and the other part's going to be the stone forward of it. So there's going to be kind of some different textures in there. So this is after I added several planks. I've been adding it to kind of framing it out. Kind of wanted to make a little bit of a lip because I'm going to make kind of like a fenced-in wall on the back side. So there'll be some on the outside, but then a fenced-in outside on the back. And then I'm going to have to measure the opening above the prison. So I'm just showing you I'm going to put more wooden planks on the other side too as well. So I cut this into 2 sections. I could make this into an L and make it one piece, but I figured it might be janky and it would be kind of wouldn't be stable, so I decided not to do that. And you can see I had to make a little notch out of there to fit the building in. So it was a little sketchy there, but it actually fits tightly together instead. So those two pieces kind of hold each other in, locks it in. So it actually kind of was like a happy mistake that worked out great. But anyways, those things, I did them all separately. And now I'm moving on to that. Like I said, I kind of want it to look like a stone fort. So where the cannon holes are, they're usually kind of like this V-shaped, so you can tilt your cannons in different directions. And I just cut them out into big chunks of insulation foam. That's the half-inch stuff I used. And then I just used a pencil and kind of just drew in the pattern. Now, I also, you can see I glued some stones to the top. I added some extra to the top to make it a little thicker. Just because it didn't seem like it was tall enough, so I had to add some extra ones to the top, which looked good. I actually like the capstones on top. That gives a good overall look. So then we got to hit our craft paint. After, you can see I added the egg cartons to that stone area as well, and we're just going to seal it all in. So you can see I just paint, I build, I paint, I build, I paint. Going back and forth, mainly because if I had a clear plan when I started this, I probably would do it more, all the pieces, and then paint it. But I didn't want to commit to things until I was sure that it was going to fit. So that's kind of why it's choppy like that in my process. This is building things on the fly as I'm inspired to do so. So then I came up with this design for a palisade wall. I'm sure there's no palisade wall like that in history. This is really where, like I said, I'm starting to get into the fantasy elements of things, but I like the way it looks, so I did it that way. And I thought it would be a lot more interesting on the walls to have it that way. And then I said the fenced inside, so the backside you wouldn't be able to shoot somebody in a cannon. There would be some kind of fence separating the two, fall over the backside. So I wanted to have that fenced in on the inside. And again, it makes it more interesting. You can actually do a fighting around the outer rim of the entire building. So then I moved on to building the walls. Now this is kind of a fortified keep, so I got my little miniature out. Make sure they can shoot through these little holes here. And that's pretty much the only thing. I didn't add any windows to the actual keep or garrison house. It was just more slits for you to shoot at. The interesting part is that the height of it goes the same height as the walkway. So actually certain little slits here are you can cover the walkways as people are coming down it. So in the safety of the garrison house. So if you can get into that garrison house, you can have a good view of the entire facility and actually protect yourself from all sorts of different areas and shoot down different walkways as people are coming down it. So again, no window openings, and I only have the one doorway down the bottom, and of course the doorway getting to the very tippy top, but you would have to get to the base to get up into the garrison house. So a little more fortified within each other, right? I'm just showing you I'm framing it out just like all the other structures. I did the texture on the outside. Mostly, I did one wall where I textured both sides, but I did plan on just leaving paper on the other ones and just adding framing in here. And similar to the overall piece, I would just frame it out. And I gave it kind of a bit of a Tudor-style look to it. And then I've used my track system to make the second floor. Those little squares, those little pieces I've used, those are where the cannon slits are going to be. So when I build a little fence around, it gets to the edge of that, and that's kind of separates where the cannon porthole is for the rest of the actual fencing, the palisade part of it. And then I like to frame the opening to where the staircase is going to be. So to make it more sell the old idea of it being more of a stone kind of keep, I decided to went with the egg carton kind of stones on top of the roof, opposed to a wooden plank look. The two floors down below have wooden planks, but the top does not. And here's my track system. So you got these little pieces sticking out, kind of like timbers. and then I kind of frame them within the inside. So if you don't frame it on the inside, they tend to slide in between the little timbers. So if you have that little extra, you can see all the way around, I've added a little extra layer of balsa wood there. Then it just kind of slides in there, and you got a nice locking, and it's easy to put them back together all the time. Because I imagine this piece will come off several times during battle to get inside the inside of the garrison house. And then I use a simple track on the bottom. The cool thing is my staircase goes out above, so you got kind of something to hold it in place there. You got your two beams on the bottom that I use for a track system, and there you go. That holds in place. And then I made a hole right where the stairs I built in there for, and then the hole on the very top of the roof is lined up where the stairs are. This will also help you line up everything when you put it back together again, because everything locks in the one way that it is. You can't put this on backwards, it won't fit. I molded it into the one way, so it only fits the one way. But as long as you're aligning the staircases to the openings and the ladder to the opening, everything should be fit nice. That's how I've designed it to fit. And you can see I've added that extra framing around the outside. Just giving you kind of a close-up look. I really like the way it looks. It's got a real rundown prison look, actually. That's what I'm going for. So then this is a small little administration house. It's really, really small. Not a lot of room in it, but a little bit of room. You can fit a unit of guys in it. Which is cool because you get the two windows which face down into the courtyard, and you could cover the front entranceway in this little house through the windows. So again, gameplay being an important part of it. It's not much to talk about here. This is the same as usual. I use the paper on one side and texturize on the outside with a tinfoil ball. I'm going to glue them all in there. Frame the windows and doorways with coffee stir sticks and matchsticks. That's what I usually use to make the windows. So we're just going to go with my standard things that I normally do. So you get something like this. Now, the only difference is I decided to go with just kind of a flat on one side, you can see, and an angled roof. Normally I would do kind of like two angled roofs on it, but I decided to, I saw a picture of somebody else built a fort similar to that, like a Spanish fort, and it had a slanted roof, and I liked the way it looked. So I figured, I'm going to incorporate that into this one as well. So this one has wooden planks in it. I didn't spend time putting like stones inside. I figured there would be wood planks inside this. It would just be kind of a house built inside of the walls. So I'm just showing all the framing I'm doing. I added another track system on the bottom so it fits into the building below. Of course, you have your opening where the staircase comes out. And then I kind of just added a little ledge on the backside just so it looks like there's kind of like an overhang to where the doorway is going to be. And then I went with this system here. This is just a piece of dollar store foam board that I've textured, framed it out with some wood, and then I just used a corrugated cardboard. You can see I kind of glued it kind of differently this time. I overlapped them and put them upside down and overlapped them, so I got the kind of this stripy look. But I am going to use black craft paint or black paint in general to make the tiles look smaller. It's hard to make it look like they're individual terracotta tiles, so I did a little trick with the paint, and that seemed to help. All right, so I'm just showing you the package again. I got those on Amazon. I think they're like packs of 20 or something like that. And I think I've only gotten 3 or 4 sheets, and I've done several structures, so they're fair size sheets. Yeah. So then I moved on to building some of the doors. That trap gate I'm going to put at the main entranceway. We got these larger doors for the main gate, and then there's doors for, the garrison house and the smaller administration house, all those other places. At the top level, there was a doorway too. So I'm just going to make them all at once. I like to paint them separately, so you got them all constructed. These are, and I forgot the trap door for the very top of the garrison house as well. Not the trap door, but the opening for the top. So this is kind of how I decided to deal with the main entranceway. I added that fence in area on both sides, and I did that so you can pull this off nice and easy. And there you go, get into that, access that cell. I figured this trapdoor would be kind of like something they would pour hot oil down, or it adds, again, some interest to the front. So you can see I just did a lot of different things in the front just to make it look more interesting at the gateway. And then, of course, this is all the other pieces fabricated. They're all ready to go. and we're going to get to the final sealant. So we're going to seal all with the black craft paint again and hit all these different areas and the doors and so we can get to the final paint job. finally get to the final paint job. So we're just taking a look at everything all painted in the black primer, all ready to go. And we're going to hit our final paint job here and all these little components. So we leave the doors off for now because I want to paint them separately. It's just a lot easier before you glue them in. So I know I'm going to show you this for the millionth time, but the real brown, bark brown, Pueblo, camel, and yellow ochre. Those are all the colors that I'm going to use, again, for the woodwork, stonework, just essentially the undertones of the entire piece. And then we're going to hit our miniature paints again and start hitting more details and our grunge team, the usual, to dirty up things. So this is probably the fourth time that I've gone and primed something. I'm just pointing out again, what I'm using that camel for is more for the stonework and the yellow ochre. I actually mix with the real brown first, and then after I'm done it, then I go yellow ochre on its own to highlight it. And then eventually I put that sand golem speed paint over top, which gives you that nice rich wood look color. And that's how I get so this is before I put all the miniature paints in. This is just after with the craft paint alone. And really, if you wanted to, you could just leave it like this. It's fine. It's a decent paint job. Like, it looks really good, the undertones. But really to add those extra details, that's when I go into hit with craft paints. The miniature paints, sorry. And you really don't need a lot of miniature paints. Like, this is a huge structure, and I'm using miniature paints to paint it. But I've already done, the craft paints have done the main, the most of the legwork here. And they're cheap, inexpensive, easy to use, non-toxic. So you slap that on there first, and then you start going into some of these miniature paints. So then we got the mummy robe, dark stone, hardened leather. We got some Graveland Gray. These are all just colors for the stonework. Add some details in there. Add some aged look to the wood. That's what I'm pointing at here. Really makes a difference. But again, doing all those craft paints, I want to add another point in there. Each time you add another layer of craft paint on top of the other, you've added more strengths. Craft paint on its own, it has strengths. But once you start adding more layers and more layers on top of it, it actually increases the strengths of the overall piece. So we got some plate mill color there as well. We got some dry rust, some going back to that lovely iron from Huge Miniatures. We're going to do all the bars and stuff on the top there and some of the bolts. And then this gold speed paint from Army Painter that we're going to put on some of the handles and some of the details on there. I'm going to add that in there with some gold paint. So that's all our metallics and some of our rock work. Then we got our necrotic flesh, our taupe color. And this new color I've never used before, called Death Guard Green. It's a Citadel paint. I just picked it up on a local hobby store. But it's a good undertone with all these other colors here. Army green. I do plan on putting on the walls inside the buildings and the outer walls. I didn't end up using that Void Shield blue. I was going to use it on the tiles, but I changed my mind. I did use that Orc Orange as well on there, just to highlight the tiles on the very top. But then I went in with my... again, I use Sand Golem and not that Paladin Bone there I just showed you. I actually use Sand Golem as the color. It's a speed paint too by Army Painter. That Malignant Green is like that's really awesome stuff. It's just kind of like a wash. Agrax Earth Shader and another new color by Citadel, Agris Dunes or whatever. It's kind of like Skeleton Horde, but it's kind of a lighter version of it. So I figured I'd try that out too, and I added some of that in there as well. So just tried some new different colors to expand on it a little bit, but nothing too crazy. All right, so this is pretty much added on there. I didn't mention that I use that hardened leather also to frame out the wood, but I didn't mention it in there as well. You could use dark wood too. That's also a very good speed paint. It looks good too, just for the wood framing. Just so you have something different than the rest of it. And that's what I used there. And I didn't mention it, but I did use that flat black paint to actually draw lines into the tiled roof. to make it look like smaller tiles. I just kind of made my own separation with black craft paint. Miniature paint. It looks really good. Then I added some tufts to it, just to add a little more interest in it and make it look more realistic. You always can add some huge miniature tufts in there and some gamer grass. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the entire table. There's the lighthouse that we built in the last episode. And moving on to the tavern that we built in the first one. Remember, I'm going to build a whole entire game base for this with docks and all sorts of different systems in it. This is just a game mat that we have it on top of, but I also want to make these pieces so you can play them separately. So let's just decide, let's say he wants to take them to a portable, takes one piece off, he can put it on a game mat, and he doesn't need to have it just on the table. So that's why I've kind of made them individual, like they're playable on their own, right? And they can be added to a mat, or they're going to be incorporated into the game base that I haven't built yet, which is going to incorporate docks, and I want to have a kind of like a warehouse system, maybe some kind of crane for the dock system. So I haven't got into that. And some kind of market and seawalls. I'm going to make different seawalls than the ones that are there. But I just want to add extra details before we get to the base. So these main structures, 3 of the main structures are completed. These are probably the 3 biggest structures: the lighthouse, the fort, and the tavern. And the other ones are going to be smaller or incorporated into the base itself. So it'll be a little bit different. But I guess I'm missing the entire pass-through of the entire fort. But we're gonna take it apart again so you can see all the different components all completed. But I wanted you to see what it looked like on the game table. We got some English rating this Spanish fort. Probably trying to spring those prisons, but it looks like they're using force and not sneaking in there. Not exactly sneaking in there. But anyways, I just wanted to show you all the different elements. I kind of set it all up just so you could see what it would look like with all the miniatures and on the game table, where everything else is. But again, it'll be incorporated into the base that I haven't built yet. So let's take a look at these different components. I'm going to have to move this guy out of the way because he's sitting on the wall, the floor that I'm about to move. And of course, I'm trying to pull it from the other side. That's the thing about, running a camera and trying, it's the opposite. Anyways, you can see what I get. It just snaps back in place by making that little valley there. See how it just snugly fits in there. It fits in there perfect. So then we got this side here. We're going to have to get that cannon. I got a cannon straddling the opening. That one opening is actually on 2 sides. That's just the way it measured out with those stone barriers. But that's all right. We'll just move it out of the way. And I'll take this off. Again, there we go. Now you can access all your cells down there below. And you can see it's got that little L shape and it's sunken in a little bit. So it just fits nice and snug in there. Perfect. That's what I really want it to be, is just easy to put back in, and it's just snug with the rest of the pieces there. Just makes it a little easier to get in and out of it. Now this took a little bit harder to get off. I actually made this really tight. I'm going to have to maybe look at loosening it a bit, but a tight fit's good. It's just to fit the roof onto that base. But I wanted to show you inside so that you can get quite a few miniatures actually in this little structure here. And then there's your staircase from the main floor up to this upper floor of this little house. And it's got a doorway on the back side that leads into the outer, the walkway on the outside. So that one actually you can access from the top or the bottom, where the garrison house you could only access it from the bottom. So moving over to the garrison house, this is the very top, or garrison house or keep. It's kind of the tallest structure in the whole fort. Of course, there would be cannons and lookout on the very top. And this is the main floor. Again, I went with a ladder, and I normally don't. I usually do staircases, but I just wanted to have more room in there so you can get more units inside. And then there's a staircase leading to the main floor where the doorway is, which also has holes in it to shoot out of. So you can really cover the base, the top, and then the very, very top. So really you could cover the entire fortification inside that keep, which I think you should be able to, as a keep, so you can protect the entire area. But you can shoot down those walkways as people are coming down. Overall, good defensive positioning. Anyway, so that's it for this project. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.